Donald Trump's already lagging approval ratings just suffered a major blow, and when Washington reopens this week and Trump's snoozing behind is shuttled back from Mar-a-Lago to the Oval Office, he's going to have one hell of a mess waiting. This, folks, is what happens when your policies make no sense and you spend more time giving rallies and getting MRIs than you do actually doing your job. Welcome to Occupy Democrats. I'm David Reddish. Jet-lagged, but none the worse for wear following my holiday sojourn. Oh, and by the way, if you're still curious what's behind the big blue curtain behind me, mark your calendars now. January 2nd looks to be the big day, and it's going to be a heck of a good weekend. Trust me. I'll see you there. On to the news. So, as you will no doubt recall from checking your holiday gift receipts, prices are rapidly rising in the United States. That's technically not the same thing as inflation, though that's on the up as well. And Donald Trump, of course, continues to claim that the affordability crisis, which was a cornerstone of his 2024 campaign, mind you, is a Democratic hoax. And that gaslighting is taking a toll on his approval ratings. For some details, we turn to CNN's Harry Enton, who I know many of you hate. Even I wish he would switch to decaf, but look, the man has the stats. Take a look.
Hey, Manu, look, 2025 was not exactly the best year for the President of the United States. He started off in pretty gosh darn good territory, right? Trump's net approval rating in January, he was 6 points above water, pretty much above where he was during his entire first term in office. But look what happens come December. 12 points underwater, way down there. That is an 18-point decline during the course of the year. Now, what has driven Donald Trump's decline in his net approval rating? Well, it's independents. That is the name of the game, baby. Look, in January, Donald Trump's net approval rating among independents was about even, minus 1 point. Not too hot to trot, but not too bad either. Now, whoosh, we're talking about 43 points underwater come December. That is a decline of 42 points on his net approval rating. Donald Trump is hanging out with Jacques Cousteau. That is how far underwater Donald Trump is with independents at this point. Now, what issues are driving this decline in Trump's approval rating, his net approval rating? Well, let's look at two of the key issues, right? The economy, the reason that Donald Trump was elected to a second term back in January, he was in pretty good shape at plus 9 points on the net approval rating. But look, come December, 16 points underwater. That is a decline, doing the math quickly here, of 25 points for Donald Trump on the key issue of the day, the economy, the reason he got a second term.
And if those poll numbers look ominous, especially going into the midterm elections, congratulations, you still have common sense. Don't go away. There's an even darker omen at hand. And here's something to consider looking at those poll numbers. The entire scope of what Americans had to spend at the holidays won't be reflected in those numbers until after the new year. People spend a lot in the immediate onset of the holidays on food, lodging, last-minute gifts, and plenty of other necessities that they didn't even plan on. And it's not even January 1st yet. And while most Americans tuned out over the weekend, eschewing political conversations on television for those around the dinner table, if at all, one key CEO gave a bombshell interview to CBS, which is kind of amazing given CBS's recent woes with trying to please Trump. See our other videos for more. I speak of Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan, who appeared on CBS's Face the Nation yesterday. In conversation with Margaret Brennan, Moynihan dropped a bomb on Trump, blaming Trump's immigration and tariff policies for the economic downturn and for working-class Americans. Take a look.
In the past year, trade and tariffs, there were a lot of shocks to the system. Yeah. It was a big concern. But Bank of America now projects President Trump's strategy is one of de-escalation, not escalation. Does that mean you see this trade war with China cooling off?
Well, I think if you go back to where we were in April, there was a lot of lack of understanding about where this would end up, and that affected small businesses and
they were shocked.
They were shocked. The sheer size, the volume, the dollars across the board, et cetera. What you see now as time's moved on, it's sort of a 15% on one side and then a higher number based on people who won't commit to purchase from the U.S. or won't commit to lowering their non-tariff barriers and things like that. And so the question, when I talk to foreign governments and they ask you the question about what's this all mean, or foreign CEOs, you say, look, you got a choice. You can be here or be here. You just have to make the choice. You're going to drive more towards America, and you'll come down to 15%. To go from a 10% across the board to 15% for the broad base of countries, not a huge impact. And that's where our team says it's starting to de-escalate, and that you're starting to see the resolution of the discussions into 15% here, 17, different numbers. When you put China's a different question because of national security interests, the rare earth minerals, the magnets, batteries, just AI, all that stuff. It's a very different case. And I think also between Mexico and China, the USMCA, which has to be redone, is also a different case. But broadly in the world, you can see sort of the end point here, and now they've just got to work through the system. How
much of a toll has that taken on small businesses? I understand B of A is the largest small business lender.
So we're the largest small business lender, and if we were sitting here in the second quarter of this year, it was a big toll. They were because rates have gone up, and that costs them more money because they borrow on revolving lines of credit. In other words, they borrow at floating rate. And then the tariffs came in and caused them, I'm not sure I can get the goods at what price and how can I commit. But as you went through the year, rates came down a little bit. So their issue right now is, can I get the labor I need to do to bid the contracts to do the work I'm doing? Because the immigration policies haven't settled in yet, and that's causing people concern. It's not that they agree with them or disagree, they just need to have the answer, and that's what they're looking for. So if you think across 4 policy regimes, tax, trade tariff, immigration, and then ultimately deregulation, you've seen a resolution of a lot of them, but I think the next one for a small business, what they tell us is labor availability. How they get there is, I need people to do this work, and I need to be dependable. They're here. So give me a set of rules, and I'll go play with them, but I need to be clarified what the rules are.
So there you have it. Mass deportations of vital labor and dissuading talented foreigners from taking jobs with American companies, talent that keeps American companies at the fore of world technology and economics, is not the way to address affordability. Neither are tariffs, which indirectly cause prices to rise for consumers. The truth of the matter is, as Mr. Monahan, a man with whom I have many disagreements, no doubt, as Mr. Monahan points out, Donald Trump, the CEO president, the self-proclaimed very stable genius with a penchant for taking cognitive tests on a regular basis, is responsible for wrecking the American economy, not fixing it. His policies are only harmful both to businesses and to consumers at all levels. In fact, the only person who benefits is Trump himself, who has used his tariffs as a cudgel to wrest personal favors and praise from CEOs, not to mention fake peace prizes. For more on that, see our other videos here on the channel. Thus, 2026 looks to be rough for the American economy, and rougher still for Trump and anyone foolish enough to follow him into the line of fire. And all of this comes as the Republican Party and the MAGA alliance face a major crisis and major fractures. All of which begs one question. What will be higher in 2026? Trump's approval rating or the number of MRIs the man gets? This is Occupy Democrats.